All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you again for being here for our Pro Huddle course for this month. It is the first of two. I'm going to jump into it because I do have a lot to cover. It's actually a smaller portion than what was on the invite because of how much I need to cover for RFPs. So the invite did go out stating we would cover RFPs and informals. However, we're going to focus on RFPs because we have multiple pieces of this to run through for y'all. And then informals, I'm just looking at it as ultimately the informals are going to basically replicate the RFP and IFB boilerplate similar to how it is now, just with the minimal tweaks to it that are necessary. So it's kind of one of those RFPs are more important for me to touch base on and make sure I go through thoroughly than to try to cram it all in and not really get into the stuff y'all need to know about the larger ones. So jumping in, it's just going to be me talking. You're welcome. The topic, we're going to cover the RFP documents. It's going to be 3 different things: pre-planning guide, new boilerplate template, and the template guide. And then I do have a topic for knowledge nugget just as a reminder to you guys. So jumping into this, just quick general blurbs about what these are. The RFP pre-planning guide is to be used before you even get to the boilerplate. So this is something we've created that is supposed to help y'all understand things you need to consider and do before, like when you first find need, before you even go the route of here's my boilerplate, let me add stuff. This is the type of stuff you need to do as your homework beforehand. Then you've got the new boilerplate template, which is your actual solicitation, the solicitation document that y'all are all used to. It looks different, mostly just because it's organized in a little different way, but that's going to still be the structure of your solicitation, and that's where you're going to be putting your department specifics into. And then you've got the RFP template guide. It's supposed to be used as you're developing your solicitation. So it literally walks you through on the step-by-step of here's this area in the RFP. This is what it means. This is what you have to consider. This is what you have to do, the type of information you have to have in there, the things you need to make sure you cover, etc. So that's just a very quick, brief overview because I'm not working through this presentation for the details. I'm going to be jumping into the actual documents. So that being said, here we go. The RFP, so I'm going to take a second and kind of give a framework and cover, like, why are we doing this again? One part of it is because it needs to be done. These things haven't been updated in decades. There's stuff that's outdated. There's stuff that needed to be rearranged for general flow, etc. And you know that I've had these boilerplates in the PMND or Pro forms working on them for a while now. But again, because of the recent legislation that passed, which forced our hands on general terms and conditions getting updated, it just kind of set us in a trajectory of, all right, we just need to get this done. We'll set everything where it's effective July 1. And so we wanted to go ahead and get this taken care of. So that's the framework of why we're here, what we're doing, and why it's changing right now. A framework of how we're approaching this is from a couple different directions. One, giving y'all better guidance as to what everything is, as opposed to giving you a boilerplate saying, here, fill it out. This is what you need to think through beforehand, during, after, etc. One thing that you'll see, and I'll reiterate when we get to it, is the template itself, because the pre-planning, the 2 guides are for department use. That's tools that we're trying to provide to y'all for you to be able to have a better understanding of things and what you need to consider. The boilerplate is what is external, right? Like technically that boilerplate is for vendors. Taking that into consideration, the manner in which we're approaching this is how can it be more vendor centric, where we're looking at it, where a vendor's able to take it, and instead of going through all the instructions and then getting to scope, it's like, why don't we put the scope at the front end? And if they get through the scope and they're like, this isn't for me, then great, put it aside. You don't have to worry about it. So we just took into consideration like what a better flow is. So a lot of the stuff is the same information, just kind of reorganized. There are edits that have been made, but you'll see that the RFP is not necessarily a drastic difference. We're going to walk through it nonetheless, of course. Okay, so we'll start with the RFP planning guide. Again, my quick intro was that this is to be used before you even touch the boilerplate. This is your homework part. What should you be considering well before you start putting words on the boilerplate to actually develop a solicitation? And you'll see this one does have a pro form number, so it will be an actual form or resource that's on our intranet site for y'all. General table of contents, but we're trying to give you as much information as possible. You'll get the introduction of what it is, who the guide is for, which technically it's for anybody that's touching anybody who is associated to a need in a department, whether that's contract administrator, project manager, managers, like anybody. Read this. These are the things to consider. And the same thing, like if I just say, consider your budget information. Like there may be different perspectives from different people involved in the process. So that's why we're saying like it's for everybody. So don't just think that a contract administrator should be the only ones working through this or just a project manager. How to use the guide, it's literally just telling you it's a step-by-step thing to walk through and consider. It's the things that y'all need to look into, and again, do your homework before you start developing an actual solicitation. So at the front end, what we did was just point out a couple of areas of awareness. It's things that we see as common issues or things that lead to issues like in the long run, that we just want to bring to the forefront of your mind and have you kind of already be aware of going into this. So these are just a couple of the things that are more prominent in issues that arise. So something for y'all to consider. Planning timeline. So I want to make clear what this timeline is. You already know that we have timelines that are associated to the solicitation process itself. You submit something to our office and a time frame starts, clock starts ticking. And we've given y'all the timelines for what that is. We help establish it with you on what dates things are due, etc. That's one timeline. That's the solicitation process. This planning timeline is for the pre-planning. So you have to take into consideration, like right now, our RFPs are going at 8.5 months. That's 8.5 months in our timeline, in our system, from when we receive it from y'all as a package to when it's executed. This planning timeline is before that. So we're giving y'all a general idea of if you have something, take into consideration not only the 8.5 months we're showing as what the average is for us to do an RFP, but if it's for something simple, add another 4 to 6 weeks. Moderate complexity, 6 to 10 weeks, and then high complexity, 10 to 16. That's something where a lot of times when we run across problems of everybody rushing, like I need to get this done, like we didn't think about this, whatever, it's because people look at our timelines and our, average amount of time it takes us to do these things and expect that that's going to be it. And it's like, no, there's a whole nother piece that has to be done before it even comes to our office. So this is just something we're giving you as, again, bring it to the forefront of your mind that there are things to plan for well before it coming to us. We're covering 6 core planning activities. You're conducting a needs assessment, performing market research, engaging stakeholders, confirm funding approach, determine your procurement strategy, and then forming the qualification selection committee. Conducting a needs assessment. You'll see in each of these categories, we're basically going to tell you what types of things you need to document, the types of questions you need to ask, and then any particular tweaks, again, to the category itself. But we're just giving you a framework of thought process, so to speak. So on the conducting a needs assessment, the type of stuff you need to consider, the questions you need to ask of, okay, I have this need. Are we the only ones that need it? Is there somebody else that we should partner with? You know, the whole nine, all of it. We have pro tips in each of these, just to give you a couple of the, we've seen this before, so maybe do this. Moving to the second one, the performing the market research. This is where I think I made this comment in a recent Pro Huddle, where even if you're recompeting an existing contract, the program's in place for years, and it's just the contract's expiring, we're redoing it again. What you have now in that industry is not the same as what you had at a minimum 3 years ago, if not 4 or 5, because you may be on an extension or your research for that one was a year or 2 in advance of actual contract execution. So y'all still need to do your market research on whatever it is you're trying to procure, right? See what it is now. Ask the questions. Maybe there's new technology. Maybe there's new players in the game. All of that, right? Get your head wrapped around now, not just banking on, well, we know and we're familiar with the players, or we know and we're familiar with the way things are done. If you dig into and do some research, you might be pleasantly surprised. I don't know, that something is out there that you had no idea about, and it may refocus you in a different way on the way you want to build something out. Engaging stakeholders. This is making sure that y'all ask the questions of, okay, who actually needs to be involved in this? Is there a technical person? Is there an operational person? Is there a field person? Administratively, it's the contract administrator. Who needs to touch this and be in the conversation about what we need, how we need it, what the key things are we need to make sure we cover, all of that, right? So who needs to be involved? The end users, etc. Also, we have noted in here about IT, finance, legal, risk management. It's not only the players that are associated to the department, but make sure that if there is something specific to your need that may touch IT, you need to work with IT. If there's something that, say it's something that's not normal in an insurance world or a bonding world or whatever, work with risk management just to make sure that we know how you need to go into building a solicitation and potentially considering whatever maybe tweaks that need to be made, all that type of stuff. So just make sure you're engaging everyone. The confirm funding approach. So oftentimes, from our perspective, procurement, we will say, in our process, it doesn't really matter where your funding comes from. That's our perspective. But it absolutely needs to matter to y'all from your perspective on where is the funding coming from? Do I have funding? If I don't have funding, should we be even considering a solicitation? There's all sorts of different reasonings or some exceptions that could be made depending upon requirements, type contract, or specific situations or circumstances. But for the most part, everybody should default to, I shouldn't do a solicitation unless I have funding. All right, that is a general default. There are circumstances that are different than that. Again, requirements types contract. It's like, yeah, you may have a budget that's sitting there, but you don't necessarily have funding directly tied to this contract. Okay, but you're setting yourself up for, you have a need, have a budget exists, and it's only you're only using that contract as something comes up and you need to get it. So there are different things to consider, but y'all need to confirm what your funding approach is, that you have that funding. Is it coming from 5 different bank accounts, so to speak, or is it just, is it operating? Is it CIP? All of that. Is it grants? If it's grants, get OGM involved, right? They need to be involved in that type of stuff. So that's all the stuff we're trying to tell you to put in the forefront. Determining your procurement strategy. Listen, this is an RFP pre-planning guide, but that doesn't mean that as you start asking all of these questions to yourself, something may not change. After you start asking things, you could look at it and be like, is an RFP really the way we need to go, or are we making this more complex than it needs to be? So maybe we think IFB. So it's just pointing out, make sure you stop and ask that question again after you've gone through all the different, determining out the meat of the stuff that you need to think through. Forming an evaluation committee. So this is something, and I know that we are still working on the concept of QSCs and evaluations and trying to figure out training for y'all and the guide and all of that. Because I know that what we give you right now is not all inclusive, so to speak. We give you general directions as to what you need to do, but I am very aware there is a gap of what understanding is on a QSC, how evaluations are done and everything like that. But in here, we're telling you some of the things that you need to consider, because what we see a lot of times is it's a quick decision just to put people on a QSC. And then after the fact, it's like, oh, well, we don't have technical people on here that understand what needs to happen or whatever. And it's like, yeah, we're a little late on that. So it's just things to consider when you're taking that in, you're trying to build out your QSC. Make sure you have the right people, make sure you have a knowledge base to understand, one, what was actually put in as evaluation criteria, and 2, that they understand what that meant to everybody who built out that evaluation criteria. So just keep that in mind. And then at the very end, we have the planning readiness checklist. This is not something you need to submit to us. This is just on here as if you want to print it out, and every time you're about to do a solicitation, you go through it and you're like, yep, got that done, got that done, got that done. Just a step-by-step thing that you can walk through and be able to comfortably say, yeah, I've covered all these pieces, we're good to go. So I know I quickly went through that. And you're ready to write an RFP. Now what? This just basically says, all right, now we have other resources for you, and you need to, it directs you to the template and the template guide and stuff like that. But see the note at the bottom in bold. At any point, you can always reach out to our office, talk to your specialist, talk to your contract performance analyst. Again, I think I've said it many times, we'd rather be involved on the front end of things in order to help put you in the right direction than for y'all to feel as though you have to go through stuff on your own, and then we all find out at the back end that something else should have been considered. So please reach out if you need help. So that's the pre-planning guide. Again, getting your juices flowing, so to speak, of your thought process before you even touch the template. So now going to the template itself. And just so you know, this one is, there is still going to be 2 RFP templates, local small business, non-local, and then 2 IFB templates, again, local and non, and same with informals. We'll have we'll have a process to the informals still to identify, going out as local and then not going and being reissued as non. So this is just one of the RFP templates, but what you'll see is we have the cover page, and the next thing we have is notice of solicitation. What we tried to do was bring some of the key information that is pertinent to the vendor as deadlines, specific scope, like right here where it's saying RFP summary. I know y'all are probably familiar with the fact that when we post when we post solicitations, there's that little scope thing that the vendors can click on and it gives them that quick summary. What we're going to have y'all do is in this summary box, put in a very concise summary. It's not going to be here, I'm just copying my whole scope of work and dropping it in. Y'all are going to have to think through how you summarize what this is for. And I'm pretty sure we're putting a character cap on it so that we can keep them concise. And then that summary is what's going to be used for the postings now, because we get stuff that's all across the board where somebody literally is copying a whole scope of work, and then somebody has 2 sentences. So if we can just get a concise, yet reasonably detailed, not detailed, can y'all know what I'm saying? Give a good paragraph of what's going on with this solicitation. That gives the vendor an opportunity to be like, yeah, this isn't in my wheelhouse, or interested, let me keep going. But obviously we covered the issue date, the due date, and then there's the RFP type and everything like that. So these are some of the key things that we just want to make sure we bring to the forefront for the vendors. Yeah, so then you've got your table of contents, and then you'll see this is the general local small business insert, and then we get here. One thing I will tell you that we focused on for this is, if you recall, the current boilerplate had a whole lot of information in it. And within that information, there was stuff that had to stay, but was not clearly indicated as has to stay. And then there was stuff that was in there as, here are your multiple options, but not as clearly indicated that if you don't choose these, get rid of them. So what we tried to do is break this down into literally the skeleton of what you need. Any information that is actual language, like you see these instructions, that means leave it in here, right? Like if that's here, that means it's part of the bones, leave it. But you see here, intent, scope of work, all of this, that we have nothing in there for you. We don't want to confuse anybody to make it seem as though if we have something under general requirements as options or whatever, that you have to choose one of those. No, those were kind of guides in a sense before, but very confusing. So what we did was we took all of that information that may have been options and dropped them into the guide. I will show you that what I mean, but there's a reason why we created a guide, so we could kind of get fluff out of the boilerplate itself and give you a clear, these are the things to consider, here are certain options you have, now take that language and drop it into the boilerplate. So the other part of this is, you'll see, this is where I was saying that it's reorganized. We're bringing all of the really important information up at the front. Instructions and everything are at the back, because when people read this, whether it's a vendor that's responding or ultimately, just departments trying to make sure they run through and cover all the meat of what they need, it puts it at the forefront and makes it clear, what is this for, and pushes the fluff and the extras down at the back end. So yeah, there's that. Again, all of these instructions, they just stay in there. The evaluation criteria and method of award, you'll see this is not changed. We are leaving it this way, but in the guide, we have a lot of information for y'all to consider on what needs to be taken into account for the evaluation criteria area. It doesn't have to stay like this, right? You may have another line of criteria that you want to add. Okay, but this is just the typical. There are things that have to stay, obviously, the VVPP, the MFD participation, stuff like that. But this is still like customizable, is what I'm getting at, basically. Then again, you have all the extra stuff that's just telling them what to expect, things that you need to do, things to consider, the process of everything on the back end. performance period. So we have the term in here. We have put it in here that it defaults to a 1+2. Or you'll see where it says click or tap to enter a date if you have, whether you say it's a year, whether you have a date, whatever. Again, yes, that's customizable, but we have it as a default. Your compensation and price adjustment language, information on the contract administrator, your special terms and conditions where you need to get into the details of things for that specific need, covering ethics just because we need to leave it in there, and then all your instructions, conditions, and notices, which is all that big fluff. Okay, so that's the main part of the RFP. One thing that we did because of, so with the update to the general terms and conditions, those are not final yet. OCA is still working to finalize those, so I don't have them in here. I just noted where they're going to go. And what you'll see is across all of our solicitations, attachment A will be general terms and conditions. That just, if you see attachment A, that's what it's going to be. So we're making it an attachment across all of them as opposed to embedding any of it into the main part of the document. Okay, so attachment A will be general terms and conditions. You'll see here that we have the acknowledgement page for the RFP. Again, looks somewhat similar, not that different. We have a required reference attachment. You've got your cost and price attachment. We would expect the pricing stuff to now be attachments. The departments put together like what it is you expect on how pricing is done, etc. That would be an attachment. You'll see that we're trying to not embed a lot into the meat of the RFP, like putting these things as attachments so it's clearly identified of, okay, here's the pricing, here's this. Mandatory insurance requirements will be an attachment. And then down here, one of the things with this, because of the issues that we were running into with the remediation, the ADA requirements for all of the websites that needed to be taken into consideration. If you recall, this used to be where each one of these items is its own link to that document. That was causing problems. So what we've done is we still have all of those items listed, so they're aware of what needs to be looked at, considered, whatever, or what may be referenced somewhere in the RFP. And instead of having those individual links, we have one link that has all of those documents. And when you go to that link, it'll just list them all out, similar to how you see here. And then they can go and use whatever documents it is that they need. That way, if links change or whatever, we don't have to go and update this on an individual basis and stuff like that. It's just easier to be able to maintain one website that has all of these documents, and if changes need to be made, it can be made there. And this still gives them the information of things that may be referenced or required for the solicitation. Okay, so that's the RFP template. Now for the guide. Again, this is a pro form, so it's going to have a number. It takes the same steps of the pre-planning guide of who's it for, how to use it, etc. You'll see we did areas of awareness again, just to bring some stuff to the forefront. And then you'll see that, so notice the solicitation. If you remember, that was the first thing we had all the way at the top. Well, this is the flow that you're going to see for the guide, right? Notice the solicitation, it'll be notice the solicitation. And then it will mirror all the way down through both documents so that you can just go straight through it in order. But this gives you an understanding of what are all these things for. You see, it even tells you what do you need to worry about and what will we worry about. right? So we're trying to give y'all as much information for clarity as possible. But so this gives you the explanation of the notice of solicitation, what each of these things is for, things to consider, like for the pre-submission conference, your questions, who it is that should be responsible for that, etc. The local small business notice, that's got to be in there. And again, as we go down it, it's just section by section, exactly mirrored to how it is in the RFP. We did this so as you use this guide, it should be a clear flow. Does it mean you're going to fill out your RFP in that order? No, but you're at least going to be able to understand the flow of what it is and be able to identify, like, okay, well, that's next, and it doesn't get mixed up, so to speak. But we go over like the intent. These are the things to consider. Here's what needs to be included. This is what you can consider. RFP goals. Here's what needs to be included. Here's what to consider. So again, we're just walking you through a thought process for the development of the RFP. Scope of work gets into the details of that. I'm not going to sit here and like obviously go through each of these, but I'm just trying to show you that while you see in the RFP template that there's this, you see this, and it's just like, okay, I have to enter stuff there. Well, that's in the guide. You'll see this one piece, general requirements, that falls under scope of work. This one piece has a lot of information that we're trying to provide to you for consideration. So again, helpful for a thought process, helpful to make sure that things that we know we need to see, you are aware of, and the things that we see that you need to consider, that it's literally like, okay, on an operational level, y'all need to consider this. Like, doesn't matter one way or another to us, but it needs to be discussed. We put that in there as consideration. So we go through that for every single piece of the RFP. Again, put tips in there for specific things that we know are like key to certain parts of the process, etc. So run through that. Sorry, I know this is a long one. I think this one's like 34 pages. So when you have a template and it's 26, but the majority of those are instructions and then the attachments at the back end, this all helps you with the key components. All right, additional considerations. This just, again, takes you down a different thought process of when you're doing some of your language on how do you consider expectations, like the outcomes, the outputs, etc. Again, giving you some information. All right, yeah, I mean, going through this, it's all per section. Evaluation criteria and method of award, where I said that we have more information on here about things to consider or what you need to put in there. There you go. This gives you a general understanding of the things that we typically see and should be considered as included, but that doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that can be there. You can make adjustments to it. Information on interviews. Performance bond, or not performance bond, performance period. Again, it's determining the thing, but it's defaulted to 1+2, but determine operationally what's necessary and ask and make your request accordingly. Things to consider for all of the compensation and price adjustments. Again, like for price adjustments, one of the biggest things is, yes, we default to the CPI and stuff like that, but think through, does that match your industry? Is there a different type of structure that needs to be considered? So make sure that you're thinking through that. Yeah, So when we get here, like instructions, those are just standard. Those, you don't have to think about that. We put them in there for a reason because they need to stay. Don't touch it. You don't have to worry about it. Attachments give you a little bit more, like obviously attachment A, you're not going to touch. Attachment B, the acknowledgement page, you're not going to touch. So any of the things that you do need to consider something on, we're covering it. Attachment C, your cost and price requirements, what needs to be included, what needs to be considered. Insurance is obviously straightforward, but there you go. So that's the guide. And so I hope you see like the key reason that we're trying to make this as robust as possible and trying to give you that before with the pre-planning, the during with the, well, not even an after, like the before with the pre-planning and the during your solicitation development, providing this other guide. It's just to make everybody think through the steps, because here's something that everybody needs to take into consideration. Y'all may do these. Like there are some people who touch solicitations 5 times a year, new solicitations, and they're cranking them out. There are some people who don't do a solicitation except for every 3 years. So if you're not used to doing it on a regular basis, you're not necessarily going to remember. So we've provided these 2 things for the front end and the back end so that there's a consistent understanding of what's expected from our perspective, but also a consistent thought process that we're trying to get everybody into. Does this mean that it's the only thought process? No. Everybody's needs are different. Operational things are going to come into play that have nothing to do with what we may be saying to you, right? Like we're going from buying, dealing with large construction jobs to buying pens. Vastly different. We need vastly different information in the solicitation. So this is just the thought-provoking structure that we're trying to give to you. And we're trying to give it to you in a consistent, flowing manner. Just trying to make it make more sense, I guess, is the best way of explaining it. So I actually got through that faster than I expected, but I haven't looked at the questions yet. So I need to look and see. Oh, only one question. Are the guides available now? If so, where can I find them? So no, not yet. I can tell you that my goal was to be able to release all of this to y'all after it was presented. However, I can't do that for a couple of reasons. One, general terms and conditions are not finalized yet. Until I get that finalized, I can't give you this package because it's part of the package. And 2, we are trying to make sure we have finalized formatting on all of these documents so that there's not anything that gets thrown off, because obviously we don't have any procurement system and therefore we're still dealing with Word, and we all know that formatting is an unfortunate waste of time that we're all spending to make sure that the page numbers are right and the section numbers are right and all like that. So we're trying to make sure we have it squared away and as locked down as possible. And it's honestly difficult, even in our different versions that we've been working in, where we've been making comments and editing and adjusting and whatever. Like it keeps getting thrown off. So we're making sure that the finalization of the formatting is correct before we give it to y'all. I will be letting y'all know as soon as I can that it's available, right? Once we have it locked down, we will provide it to you. A key part is the general terms and conditions that we're waiting on. That's just that. It's part of the package. I can't give it to you until that's done. There aren't any other questions. So I don't know how to take that. somewhat concerning because maybe I threw everybody off and this doesn't make sense, or really good because it makes sense and hopefully everybody. I think it's going to be a benefit to everyone. Maybe like right now, everybody from all sides, our office, y'all, OCA, everyone is going to have to be patient because nobody's used to this, right? This is going to be a completely different view, completely different format. So it will take more time for us to all get through each of these solicitations, at least for a little while until we get through the flow of things, right? The ones that y'all are used to now started at one point, nobody was familiar with it. Guess what? Everybody's familiar with it now. So the same thing's going to happen with this. The guides, while I could understand that as people get used to this, they may not want the guides or may not want to like worry about the guides, but honestly, the pre-planning and the template guide are there to make sure you think through all the pieces. Maybe you see it as an extra step that's unnecessary, but I will highly recommend that as y'all are building out each solicitation, taking into consideration every solicitation is different, it doesn't hurt to just use it and make sure you're walking through all of it and not missing something. Because especially on that concept of something may have been out before and we kind of just regurgitate it the next go round. I think we all need to pause and say, we really need to reevaluate everything each time we're doing this, as opposed to just a copy and paste and let's move on. Okay, so more stuff is coming in. What about RFPS in process now? I don't know what RFPS is, so Patty, if you can tell me. Will there be an open solicitation similar pro form in time? Yes, we are looking at creating some sort of open solicitation structure. It's just not at the forefront of the list of things to do. Is there a place in the template that states by accepting funds from MoCo funds, the recipient must comply with Title II of the ADA? All of that type of stuff is going, like, if it's legal stuff that's required, that's OCA making sure our language is in there. I would imagine that I know there's ADA language that's being updated in the general terms and conditions. So like, I can't think of what you mean as that specific concept, but if there's ADA requirements, yes, I can tell you general terms and conditions have language about ADA, meeting ADA requirements. Sorry if that doesn't completely answer your question. Will the new RFP pro form be used for REOIs, or will there be a separate form for REOIs? No, as of right now, we don't have something that's separate for REOIs. The structure is similar enough that it's fair to say use the RFP process to, like the RFP information to structure out your REOI also. Okay. Keith, that's a different question that is very specific to a certain circumstance you're dealing with. Do me a favor, take that and drop it in a chat to me specifically so I can follow up with somebody and try to work with you on that. Oh, sorry, Patty. RFPs plural. Okay, well, I have to go back to that question now. What about RFPs in process now? Gotcha. Okay, so back to what I had mentioned before on how this is all going to play out. If there are packages that are in our office or things that are already posted, all of that, and are actively being engaged, then it will remain as it is if it's able to be posted before July 1. If it's not able to be posted before, or it's not able to be posted before July 1, making sure I'm saying this right. If it's not able to be posted before July 1, then I'm not going to say that yet. I need to confirm something with OCA. What I will say is there's going to be a transition period. There may be stuff that's in our office that we may have to send back to y'all to get your assistance in order to get this stuff shifted over to the new boilerplate. Because there's some stuff right now that people may have sent over and it's nothing that is time sensitive, and therefore we're going to focus on things that may already be here and we need to get them out and executed and stuff like that before July 1st. And also it's year end. So if there's not something that has to be done right now by June 30th, then it will likely be pushed and need to be put on the new boilerplate. It sucks. I'm not happy to have everybody do it. Like I said before, usually in the past, when I've made these updates and a boilerplate change has happened, I usually give y'all the list of the things that changed so that y'all are aware. And I had said, and we did, where if it was already in our office, we would handle those changes. This is just not realistic for our office to be able to handle that type of shift of information being reorganized and stuff like that. And also with the breakdown we're giving y'all on the things to consider, you may have to make adjustments of what may have been like all inclusive in a scope could potentially be 3 different sections now in the new boilerplate. So some stuff may be coming back to y'all. I apologize. It's not the greatest thing in the world for everyone, but at the same time, it's part of the process. And we're all going to own a delay in this. I know that it's going to delay our numbers on getting stuff turned around. It is what it is, right? These updates haven't been done in a while and they need to happen. How do we determine when it needs to be an RFP versus a grant through OGM? That's just a general discussion to have between our office and OGM on the front end of things, because there may be the very high level thing to consider is if the grants agreement versus a procurement contract is if there's an invested outcome and performance expectation, then it should probably be a procurement contract, even if it's grant funded. If it's something where we're just giving funds out and a vendor is doing good things for the public and how they do them is not any of our concern, we're just giving them the money to do it, that goes towards the grant agreement side of things. That is a very high level, very broad, not specific answer for you on that. The OGM did provide like a good, it was us, OGM, and OCA that worked on a good, detailed, like, these are the things to consider to determine if it should be a grant agreement or a procurement contract. So you need to go through that whole list. But the very broad concept is if there's performance expectations that we need to have our thumb on the pulse, then it should probably be procurement contract, because then we can build that in as performance expectations. If it's something where we're just giving money and people are doing great things, you go the grant route. Just because you're getting grant funding from somewhere doesn't mean it's a grant process. We can use grant funding through a procurement process. Some grants require you to follow your procurement requirements and stuff like that. So it also depends on what the grant language says. So that's a discussion that's between multiple parties. Make sure, again, on the front end, we're all on the same page. Okay, so that's all the questions that have come in. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Just kidding. Y'all can tell me anything you need. This is a big change. Big shift that is okay though. We're going to figure it out. It has been a lot to really sit and analyze. One thing I will say is I give kudos to my team for the effort that they've put in on this. The managers, the procurement specialists, everybody has sat down and we really tried. Since we're doing these changes, we've tried to tear apart the why is this here? What is it? Does it need to be here still? Does it need to be rearranged? Does it need to be the language be adjusted? All of it. We tried to hash out as much as possible to clean this stuff up. I'll reiterate again, and I'll own it. I am not going to hit the nail on the head with this. All of these being changed, all the PMMDs getting updated. It's okay. Something's gonna be missed. I'll own it. But that doesn't mean we can't fix it. And I can tell you right now, all of this stuff is we even expect iterations of this, right? We know that there's going to be stuff that once it starts being used, that we realize, hey, we need to do this a little different, or hey, we need to add this. So always a work in progress, always able to better something that we've already done. And if y'all run across problems, if you have thoughts, concerns, high fives, whatever, please let me know, because the feedback from y'all, as obviously one of the large users of all of these things, matters. I try to take it into account. I try to take the perspective I had as a contract administrator, as well as the perspective I have in my position now, in order to hopefully balance it. But I can say also, as a contract administrator, I didn't have this same operational needs as other people in other departments. So there may be something that's a total blind spot to me. And if y'all don't give us a heads up as to, well, that's great and all, but then I don't know. So please just let us know if there's anything else. I just realized I need to go back to my presentation. Give me a second. All right. Just going over the dates. May 15th, gone. Now we're into the process of the extra steps for requisitions. Once the budget's loaded, 5 days is what you get. And then your June 17th and June 24th dates. Keep all that in mind. We're ticking away. We're almost there. Knowledge nugget. I need to bring up again a situation we keep running across. This is associated to when people ask for contract documents. Please just be aware. We don't get to just toss out contract documents to whoever's asking for it, right? There are processes in place for people getting access to contracts. There are certain things that even people who get access to contracts can't distribute because of a process that needs to be done for MPIA. So if say you're one of the ones that has access to Knowledge Lake and all the contracts that are on there, if somebody asks you for a copy of a contract and they don't have access to that, don't just give it to them. Direct them to Yoda, have them request to get access to Knowledge Lake, and they can fill out the forms associated to that request to get approval. Because there has been a lot of contracts just being shifted around and provided. And the problem is that there's confidential information that shouldn't necessarily be provided. Pricing on some stuff shouldn't just be given to somebody. So we're trying to rein that in. So please don't just give it to anybody. If they don't have access to Knowledge Lake, they can put a request in and go through the process of the employee and director approvals. We'll review it, because we're also going to determine, does this person actually need access to this? Because it's not something we want just everybody to have. And if you can't complete it, then y'all can just ask for stuff via an MPIA request, and it'll go through the same process as everyone else, where the opportunity for the vendor to redact it, etc. And this is the same guidance associated to proposals that may have been received for then following contracts. Proposals should not necessarily be given to anybody as well. So I wanted to put that in there as a note to y'all, just to remind you. Our documents are not something that should just be openly distributed. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, ask OCA. They're very helpful to us on what we can and can't do. So I'm sure they will be helpful to you on whether or not you should or shouldn't ask for certain stuff. But we're trying to be more diligent in how we handle this. We have a process in place for the right people to get the right access, but we just ask y'all to follow that. And then, yeah, part 2 is going to be on Friday. That's going to be the IFB. I will say that is going to be the biggest thing that looks different to you. Very, very different. But I love it because it's cleaner. And then we'll cover informal boilerplates at some point. Again, those are going to be replicative. They will replicate. That might be the right word. The RFP and IFB anyhow, again, with the tweaks for the informal process. And then eventually we will cover encumbrances, liquidations, and the vendor and CA scorecards that we have. Those are the vendor and CA scorecards. Those are things that are kind of ready already, but we had to push that off because we had to get these projects done. So, yeah, that's all I got for you. I appreciate y'all coming. I will hopefully see you on Friday to go over the IFB. Thank you again.